The top headlines: a host of African leaders arrived in Addis Ababa ahead of the AU summit on Saturday. And a leading scholar calls on AU leaders to rethink both regional and global security strategies. Hello and welcome to EBC World, the voice of Pan-Africanism. I'm Hikma Tamam with the news for the hour. To stay with us. A host of African leaders are landing in Addis Ababa ahead of the AU summit on Saturday. Kenyan President William Ruto has arrived in Addis Ababa today to attend the 38th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union. Similarly, Prime Minister of Barbados, Mia Mottley, has arrived in Addis Ababa to attend the summit. Upon arrival at Bole International Airport, she was received by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Also today, Vice President of Cote d'Ivoire, Timoko Meiliet Khan, has arrived in Addis Ababa to participate in the 38th ordinary session of the Assembly of Heads of State and Government of the African Union. Upon arrival at Bole International Airport, the Ivorian Vice President was received by Ethiopia's Minister of Health, Mekdes Daba. In another development, the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has arrived in Addis Ababa this morning to attend the 38th African Union Summit. Upon his arrival, Ethiopia's Deputy Prime Minister Temesgen Turuneh and Foreign Affairs State Minister Burtukan Ayano gave him a warm welcome at the Bole International Airport. Antonio Manuel de Oliveira Guterres, GCL, is a Portuguese politician and diplomat who is serving as the 9th and current Secretary General of the United Nations since 2017. Guterres is expected to deliver a speech at the AU 38th Heads of State and Government Summit scheduled for Saturday.
Countries to begin to look at agriculture more as a business.
Everything that has to do with agriculture is CADEP. Whether you're talking about trade, if you're talking about youth employment, you're talking about wealth creation, the post-harvest management issues, the land-related issues, bringing on board the private sector, private financing, investment, that all is talking about CADEP itself. So CADEP broadly is the whole spectrum of agricultural developments on the continent.
Welcome back, and now moving on, a prominent scholar is urging African Union leaders to reassess both continental and global security dynamics to better address the growing political instability across Africa. In the lead-up to the upcoming 38th AU Summit, the scholar is advocating for a focused discussion on the peace and security agenda. In an exclusive interview with EBC World, Jonas Adaye of Addis Ababa University also called on African leaders to push for a ceasefire agreement in conflict zones, specifically in Sudan and the DR Congo, as part of efforts to stabilize the continent. Shagai Matop spoke with the scholar and brings us the details.
Jonas Adaye, Associate Professor of Peace Studies at Addis Ababa University, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
The African Union is set to undertake its annual summit in Addis Ababa this weekend. Addressing peace and security issue is one of the priorities of the summit. In this regard, how can the African Union reassess or strengthen its current conflict resolution strategies to better respond to evolving challenges like transnational insurgency and political instability?
After the new leadership in the USA, things are fast changing. Fast changing, some of them were totally unpredictable. And it is taking another very amazing, sort of dramatic shape. Almost a new world order is emerging. So the African Union, before they reassess their own security analysis and situation, they must read what is currently on the ground globally.
Given the AU's emphasis on African solutions to African problems, how can leaders navigate the role of external actors in peacekeeping and mediation efforts without undermining the local ownership and leadership?
When African Union leadership as a whole assesses the peacekeeping aspect, or when they want to implement African solution for African problems, it should be based on the fundamental philosophy of peace, which says peace is indivisible. Africa's peace is Europe's peace, is America's peace, is China's peace. Because if Africa is in turmoil, Americans or Europeans or Chinese cannot invest in Africa. So they also, it's a sort of give and take world, and they should at the same time get involved, willingly contribute for this peacekeeping.
African Union is playing a key role in reducing conflicts in past few years. However, some countries are still trapped in a vicious cycle of conflict. What concrete measures and resolutions to expect on the upcoming AU summit, prioritizing to address such crises while aligning with Agenda 2063's peace and security goals?
Priority must be given to really countries burning in conflict, such as DRC now, as we speak here, such as Sudan now, as we speak here, and of course other parts which were not also mentioned. Terrorism is not mentioned here. I didn't mention it. Violent extremism is not mentioned. And this exclusive or marginalization feeling across Africa at the same time, because they were not well represented in their governments, as a result they feel marginalized, these discontents. But the latter points which I have been mentioning could be addressed through medium terms and long term. Immediate ones are going for, say, ceasefire, for instance. A quick agreement, after that cessation of hostilities, then also focusing on maybe power sharing or national dialogue, or at the same time recommending, as you said, African-led African solution for African problems.
Jonas Adaye, Associate Professor of Peace Studies at Addis Ababa University, thank you for your insightful explanations on Africa's peace and security issues.
Thank you very much.
Ethiopia.
Experts are urging African leaders to prioritize a stronger Pan-African agenda for the continent's development. In an exclusive interview with EBC World, Deputy President of the Global Black Center and a prominent diaspora advocate called for a greater unity across Africa through a focus on history, heritage and education. Johannes Fentahon brings us up to speed.
The 2025 Africa Union Summit is scheduled for this weekend. This year's summit, in which more than 15,000 participants, including heads of states and governments, are expected to attend, people of the continent are expecting reasonable outcomes. People like Robin Walker and the young diaspora are optimistic in their expectation, and they urged the leaders to put more Pan-African agenda to practice.
I'm a member of the African Union, so I'm totally supportive of it. My thing is don't let what we are doing here stop anybody else from doing what they want to do. Don't let what we're doing here stop them. Because my thing is, the more Pan-Africanism and the more Pan-African agendas that we can, and initiatives that we can put into practice, the better it is for all of us.
Come together on one particular aim, one particular mission, and stay focused on that. You know, Ethiopia was able to unite its tribes and its people in order to defend itself against colonization, and I think African countries and leaders can do the same, to be able to come together and lead the Pan-African movement globally.
Educating the new generation about the history, heritage and culture of the continent is what the experts proposed, with a sole purpose of creating mutual respect within the continent.
Ultimately, there isn't a heritage center where you can go into the heritage center and there's Ethiopian artifacts, there's Benin artifacts, there's Yoruba artifacts, there's great Zimbabwe artifacts. No one has done that. That's unique. Where there's a vision of history, where we don't just learn about Aksum, Lalibela, Gondar. We also learn about Great Zimbabwe, Kami. We also learn about Kilwa, Mombasa, Malindi. We also learn about Timbuktu, Jene. We also learn about Ife, Owo. So that's changing the perspective. And now what that means is, for every African child that is exposed to this information, they now see, wait a minute, this much heritage exists across Africa, why weren't we told? And then that's how we build mutual respect between different groups of African people.
In order for us to improve it, we have to really teach our young people about their history so that they have a strong knowledge of self. Once they have a strong knowledge of self, they're able to identify and relate to that Pan-Africanism ideology, and have an understanding that we should be looking to go back home and create strong connections between the African continent and the countries inside, but also the diaspora.
Addis Ababa is expressing its readiness for hosting this year's summit with exceptional one-year-long preparation.
Ethiopia has been elected to the African Union Peace and Security Council during the 46th ordinary session of the AU Executive Council. The election came in recognition of Ethiopia's contributions to peace, security and development across the African continent. The following piece by our staff reporter Tigist Nisa sheds more light on the matter.
Ethiopia is already a major player in peacekeeping operations, consistently ranking as one of the top troop contributing countries to both the African Union and the United Nations. Ethiopian forces have been deployed to numerous conflict zones, playing a vital role in missions like AMISOM in Somalia. The nation is also notable for its high number of female peacekeepers. And today, Ethiopia's dedication has been further recognized. The African Union has elected Ethiopia to its Peace and Security Council. The election took place at the 46th ordinary session of the Executive Council of African Union, currently underway in Addis Ababa. Foreign Minister Gideon Timotheos addressed the Executive Council earlier this week, calling for renewed African solidarity and cooperation. He emphasized that the continent's future hinges on collective action and a united front.
The peace and security situation in our continent will also require us all to strengthen our continental-wide institutional capacity to foster mediation and conflict prevention mechanisms. Ethiopia also takes this opportunity to commend the African Union's peacekeeping missions and the critical role they play in maintaining peace and security across the continent. As we deliberate on these and other critical issues, let us renew our commitment to the traditional African solidarity and friendship. Africa's future depends on our collective will and action. Together, we can overcome the challenge before us and unlock the potential of our continent for the benefit of all African peoples.
Ethiopia's election to the Peace and Security Council underscores its ongoing commitment to maintaining stability and security across Africa. The minister further highlighted that realizing the vision outlined in Agenda 2063 of AU requires effective coordination and robust partnerships among member states and regional economic blocs.
The vision outlined in Africa's Agenda 2063 holds great promise for our continent's prosperity. Realizing this immense potential requires more than just strategic frameworks. It requires strong political will, effective coordination, and robust partnerships among member states and regional economic communities. Only through collective efforts can we ensure the successful implementation of Agenda 2063 and transform Africa into the Africa we want. This requires us to strengthen our efforts to realize Africa's flagship projects, to unlock our growth and prosperity potential, and consolidate on the progress we made in creating a continent-wide free trade area.
Ethiopia has a long history of involvement in UN peacekeeping operations dating back to the Korean War in 1950s.
Finally, Somali and South Sudanese ministers of agriculture and irrigation have lauded Ethiopia's commitment to irrigation schemes as a source of inspiration for Africans. They emphasized the need for the continent to harness water resources and expand climate-resilient irrigation to reduce reliance on rain-fed agriculture. Goshu Meliso reports.
Despite Africa has vast water resources including major rivers, lakes and groundwater resources, the continent has not fully harnessed its potential. The agriculture system remains largely dependent on rain-fed farming, leaving millions vulnerable to climate variability and drought. However, this long-standing challenge is now gaining serious attention. A conference which focuses on irrigation and climate-resilient production is underway in Addis Ababa. Talking to EPC participants who came from Somalia and South Sudan stressed the continent to harness available water resources to get out of rain-fed agriculture and ensure food security.
There is no agriculture without water. So we have to use the water in a highly skilled way, because we cannot continue the traditional way of water using. So this meeting really come to the right time. It's very important. We cannot combat the climate change unless we develop the water usage in agriculture sector.
For years, Africa has not been doing enough to achieve food security, and one of the reasons why we have not achieved food security is because we rely very much on rain-fed agriculture. And with this problem of climate change, where reliability of water or rain is a problem, or even absence of it is also another problem, the only alternative way of addressing food security challenge is to rely on irrigation.
Countries like Ethiopia are scaling up large-scale irrigation projects. South Sudanese and Somali Minister of Agriculture and Irrigation commended Ethiopia's effort as a source of inspiration for Africa.
The government of Ethiopia needs to be appreciated for having launched a number of projects, one of which is the irrigation scheme that was presented to us this morning, and with the experience that they have gained now, and the determination, to achieve food security for millions of its citizens, this is going to be a source of inspiration for the rest of us, to follow what Ethiopia is doing.
We found out that Ethiopia has a policy, and they developed a water usage in a very efficient way. And I believe the other countries can learn from that, because for us it's very important, because both rivers, we get water from Ethiopia. We are the downstream countries of Shabelle and Juba.
South Sudan's Minister of Water Resources and Irrigation further said regional cooperation is important. South Sudan learns a lot of experience from Ethiopia.
For us to stand on our own feet, we need support of countries like Ethiopia, and I hope with this engagement that the Ethiopian government has done in achieving food security through irrigation, the government of South Sudan and the people will now have a lot to learn from Ethiopia and to emulate, what Ethiopian government is doing in the country, so that they try to address, the problem of food security. Yes, back home, South Sudan is one of the countries which ranks 7 on the global list of countries was affected by climate change. Year in, year out, we always have too much flooding that displaces quite a big number of people. And with that, we could not do very well in terms of food production because of too much water, which is destructive to crops. We believe that the best way to address our food security challenge is to invest in irrigated agriculture, which is one of the areas that the Ethiopian government has taken lead.
Well, that's it. The news for the hour here on EBC World. Now a recap of the top stories once again. A host of African leaders arrive in Addis Ababa ahead of the AU summit on Saturday. And a leading scholar calls on AU leaders to rethink both regional and global security strategies. Thank you for watching and goodbye.